Yo, as manga fans, there are very few things that can get us more excited than a new shiny anime adaptation. Being able to see all your favorite moments be brought to life, or horribly maimed, depending on the studio. But I live for that moment of reading a manga and then going to see the anime and seeing all these moments in motion with great music and great voice acting. Like, the Dandadan anime is about to come out, and that shit looks fire. I cannot wait for that anime. Being able to see Turbo Granny and the Evil Eye and all that be animated, bro. But by far, the thing that manga fans anticipate being animated the most are the fight scenes. Because manga fights, they're cool, they're fun, but anime fights are just on another level. I mean, anime has every advantage with the fluid motion as compared to a still image in a manga. And there are so many manga fights that deserve to be animated just to do them justice. Because it's impossible to do them complete justice with just manga. So today I got 5 manga fights that need to be animated. For our first fight, we have Black Star versus Mifune.
Fire! Oh, what are you saying, bro?
And Mifune versus Black Star built up so much hype, largely because of what came before it, which will be a common trend on this list. But Mifune first shows up way back in chapter 1, really pre-chapter 1, because it was part of one of the one-shots that came out before the manga was serialized. But the first time Mifune shows up, he styles the fuck out on Black Star. Black Star throws a shuriken. Mifune catches it by planting his blade into the ground and then pounces on it like a cat. So that's not raw.
Black Star
does end up quote-unquote winning by doing some trickery, but it's made very clear that Black Star is nowhere near as strong as Mifune is. But Black Star allows him to live because he's protecting this little witch girl, and Black Star's like, I'm not gonna kill this little girl, so he lets them live. Which makes it even wilder when later on we find out Mifune is allied with the main villain group. So then it's like, oh shit, Black Star gotta fight him again. And this fight plays into one of Black Star's biggest personal conflicts, which is trying to get stronger but without losing himself. He doesn't want to end up like his family and crash out and get massacred, so he has to figure out within himself how to get stronger while staying on that warrior's path. And this fight specifically is where that conflict reaches its peak. So when Black Star finally pulls up, it's like, oh, this is a different nigga. This is not the goofy kid we usually get. And the way that their fighting styles bounce off of each other is so hard. First of all, Mifune himself just has one of the rawest fighting forms I've ever seen, because Mifune uses infinite one sword style. It's hard to explain. He has infinite swords, but he only swings with one at a time and uses the rest of them as like either projectiles or shields or as ways to pin down his opponent. Like right when Black Star thinks he has the drop on Mifune, 3 swords drop in front of him to protect him, and then he uses the sword in his hand to hit those swords, flip them up out the ground, and then hit them all towards Black Star as projectiles. This shit had me pacing around the room. It had me genuinely scared for Black Star, because it's like, how do you defend against that? Every time you think you block something, there's infinite possibilities of him just hitting you in your blind spot. But Black Star shows us how he plans to counter it when he starts using his demon weapon. And Tsubaki, Black Star's partner, happens to be a special kind of demon weapon that can transform into all different kinds of forms, all possessing unique abilities. And at this point in the manga, this is the first time we ever see Black Star using these forms successfully. So we have no idea what it can do. Everything that it does is completely new to us. But Black Star counters Mifune's infinite style by using Severed Shadow, which it basically gives the nigga shadow clone. But even stronger than that, he has the form Masamune, which gives him this cold ass scarf that makes him look raw as hell, and it works as a weapon. But with this form comes a different stance that allows him to fight more fluently on some drunken master shit. And this is what I love about this fight. Just 2 hyper aggressive fighting styles going toe to toe. Just close range, weave, dodge, swing, weave. No faith, no intelligence, just 2 pure dex builds. Because it's not even that their powers are super OP, even though they kinda are, but these are just 2 super skilled, super strong fighters, and they're just zipping around swinging at each other. We get this cold ass spread of Mifune and Black Star in the air, and Mifune has like all his swords around him. It's peak. That's what I'm talking about. It's peak. Even though they have these crazy ass powers, this fight feels so much more human than the rest of the fights in Soul Eater, because at the end of the day, Mifune and Black Star, neither of them are witches or demon gods. If you ask, Black Star is a demon god, but come on, bro. At the end of the day, they're just human. So when they cut each other, that shit looks like it hurt. Like Black Star damn near cuts Mifune's arm off, and then Mifune tries to catch Black Star while he's off balance, and Black Star has to block it with his foot, and you actually see the blade like halfway through his foot. It's brutal. And they was getting grimy. They clashed one time, and Mifune just grabs Black Star's hand, break his fingers.
Why?
But I mean, hey, it's a battle to the death, anything goes. But by far, the best part of this fight is that final clash. Cause they both decide, no more powers. Throw away all your swords, turn off all your soul powers. Just one sword, let's box, nigga. And they are chopping each other. We get these close-up shots of Mifune and Black Star all cut up. Coldest panels in the manga. I don't care what nobody says. This right here is what made Black Star my favorite character and soul leader, and probably top 5 all time. Especially with what the conclusion of this fight and what it means to Black Star's character and what it does for him going forward, because Black Star contextualizes battle so much differently. Instead of him defeating these people and leaving them in the dust, it's like he takes them with him, and as he accomplishes his dreams, their souls are fulfilled as well. All the souls of these fallen warriors who want to rise to the top, it's like Black Star's gonna take them with him. It kind of reminds me of Thorfinn and Vinland Saga and how he feels about the people that he killed. And Thorfinn's another one of my favorite characters. You see where this comes from?
その秘めた能力は無限にして絶対かつ唯一無二の夫それが僕のターゲット Hey yo!
Next on the list, we have Chrollo versus Hisoka, and this fight has some of the most insane build-up. We got two of the most feared and most loved villains in Hunter x Hunter fighting each other. I think now we take this shit for granted, but when you first get to that point of the manga, it felt so big.
Pause.
And a lot of this has to do with the way that the story up to this point has made us anticipate this fight happening. This is long-running beef, because Hisoka infiltrated the Phantom Troop and pretended to be a loyal member, which low-key started the downfall of the Phantom Troop. And he did all of this with the purpose of picking a fight with Chrollo, which he ended up not being able to do at first because Chrollo got his nin taken by Kurapika. So the thought of Chrollo and Hisoka fighting had been floating around in fans' mind for a long time. It was like a fantasy. This fight was actually one of the main things that made me pick up the manga after finishing the anime. I couldn't resist. They said Chrollo versus Hisoka. That shit just sounds crazy. And I was not disappointed. And the setting just adds to the atmosphere. They're in this giant arena with a huge crowd. Everybody's cheering. They got an announcer announcing their names. It feels like they made it a huge spectacle just for the reader. But the crowd isn't just there for atmosphere. They play a huge role in this fight, mainly because of who's fighting. Because if it was Gon or Killua fighting, the crowd probably wouldn't make much of a difference. But the issue here is the two fighters are two insane niggas that do not care about human life and will use anybody to win a fight. But I think what I love about this fight the most is just the strategy of it all. Mainly because of Chrollo's ability to steal techniques and to use multiple techniques at once, and the way he mixes and matches and combines abilities, and then he uses these abilities to like misdirect you and make you think he's gonna do one thing and then he does another thing. Chrollo just the fucking goat, man. And Chrollo knew Hisoka was gonna come after him, so he gathered the perfect abilities to fight against Hisoka and his bungee gun. And all of it just shows how smart and calculated Chrollo is, because he gets all the perfect abilities that allow him to control the crowd. He has two separate abilities that both control people, one to give more specific instructions to a smaller amount of people, and another one for turning large amounts of people into mindless puppets. And with this, he can use people as shields to mask his attacks or to give him time while he comes up with another strategy. Then he has another ability that can make people explode when he places certain marks on them. So now, not only can he use people as shields, but he can also use them as weapons. He's just throwing people at Hisoka and making them explode on him. Then he has another ability.
Are you serious right now, bro?
That makes it so he can duplicate people and use the puppet ability to control them. You see what I'm saying? How he put that shit together? But the thing is, Chrollo can only use two abilities at a time, and he has to pull out his book to swap them. And that's when he makes use of the mindless puppets and stuff, because he uses them as distractions while he switches his abilities around. And that's just what I love about fights in Hunter x Hunter. Everybody's ability has these little details that make every fight so much more dynamic. But I hope you still following me, because Chrollo has one more ability.
Oh my god, bro.
And this ability allows him to change people's appearance. He can make himself look like someone else, he can make other people look like him, or he can swap two other people's appearances with each other. He can basically do everything, bruh. But okay, that's all the abilities, I promise. But that's also what makes this fight so insane, is that Chrollo really felt like he needed all of these abilities to fight Hisoka. And Hisoka only got one, he just got bungee gun. Because Hisoka is just so quick on his feet and so good in a fight, he's actually able to keep up with all of Chrollo's schemes and all these different abilities he has. It's insane. And the fight becomes this crazy cat and mouse chase of Hisoka's relentless crazy motor versus Chrollo's complicated calculated scheme. And what makes it really interesting is we don't see Chrollo very much in this fight at all. For basically the entire fight, we're following Hisoka's perspective and we're getting shocked right with him when Chrollo comes up with a new insane plan. We're sitting right there confused as fuck with Hisoka as he's trying to figure out, okay, he used the clone ability first, then he used the bomb ability, but then he swapped his appearance, and then he used the puppets to blow up this, and then I don't know how he did it. I would have been in that bitch with a headache. And when 50 crowd members jump out their seats and run at Hisoka, we're all equally confused. And we get these cool ass panels of people jumping up and climbing each other like zombies to try to get to Hisoka as he's flying through the air. Probably some of my favorite panels in Hunter x Hunter in general. And this is where we really see the difference in how Chrollo fights and how Hisoka fights. Because while Chrollo's using people as human shields and slipping in, getting his own hits in, he's sliding in while Hisoka's distracted, punching him in the back of his head. Hisoka decides to use the crowd in a much different way. He starts using bungee gum to take niggas' heads and limbs off and basically use them as weapons. We get like this whole explanation about how the human head is basically the same weight as a bowling ball, so swinging it around and shit is actually really destructive. But really, at the end of the day, Hisoka is just crazy. But it's actually hard because Hisoka's using those body parts and sticking them with his bungee gum so he can retract them and hit Chrollo in his blind spots while he's not paying attention. It's just two niggas that have both mastered their abilities and both know how to use Nen to its fullest potential. And it is unexpectedly brutal. Well, maybe expectedly brutal. Because you really feel that this is two villains fighting. There is no hero in this fight, unless you're a nigga like me, in which case, Chrollo is always the hero. But eventually, Chrollo, just having the numbers advantage, starts to get the best of Hisoka. He starts getting caught off guard by the bombs, one of them blows his hand off, and it feels like the whole fight, Chrollo is forcing Hisoka to fight at his pace. But all of this just shows how insane Hisoka is, because he gets his hand blown off, he doesn't even react. No scream, nothing.
Light work, no reaction.
But eventually, all of this becomes too much for Hisoka. The zombies pile on him and blow him the fuck up. Dead ass. Hisoka dies here. End of the fight, he's dead. But that's how nice these niggas are. After the fight ends and everybody's left, Hisoka just comes back to life. After everybody leaves and shit, Hisoka brings himself back to life using residual Nen that he sent off prior to him dying, blah, 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 blah. But that's what makes this fight even harder. It's not over. Even today, in the current manga, Hisoka and Chrollo are still looking for each other and trying to fight each other again. And really, if that does happen, there's no telling how it's gonna go this time, because they are in a completely different setting. I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready for that round 2.
It's not gonna happen. Liar. Hey man, she made the decision herself.
Next is Arthur versus Dragon. And Fire Force Season 3 has been announced, so we know for a fact that we're gonna see this fight sometime in the near future. And I can't fucking wait, man. And the prep for this fight is just so... It's something that could only happen in Fire Force. Because prior to this fight, Dragon and Arthur came across each other for the first time. And Arthur, being the self-proclaimed Night King, felt like it was his destiny to defeat the dragon and save the world. But Dragon was way too strong for that nigga Arthur. So he had to go into a training arc. And in a traditional training arc, you would think, he's gonna train his swordsmanship, or he's gonna learn how to control his flames better, or he's gonna learn some deep secret about controlling your flames. No. But what the nigga does do is play a Super Nintendo RPG where you play as the Night King. And by getting to the end of that game and beating it, it makes him feel like more of a Night King, therefore making his power stronger.
What?
I know, it's stupid as hell, and Arthur is an idiot, but when he came out of that training arc, he was raw as hell. One of their friends gets taken over by this mind control thing, and this is the most aura Arthur had in the whole story. He just pulls up, right through the head. It felt like this was a whole different nigga. I got up out my seat. And Dragon is pretty interesting as a character too. He reminds me a lot of Kaido. He like laments the image of being the strongest that he was born from and longs to be defeated. But in Fire Force is really cool because it plays into like these ideas of getting power from despair and finding hope in death. And all this leads to the creation of Lord Death and the Death School and all that. And the best part of this fight is just the scale of it. This is a fight for the fate of the world, and they really make it feel like it. There isn't even like an arena for the fight or a setting for the fight. The whole world is the setting. They're getting knocked through the air. He's punching them into the ocean and then knocking them into space. I think at some point Dragon even says this world's not big enough for the both of us. Damn right. And the Chrollo versus Hisoka fight and the Black Star versus Mifune fight were all about strategy and skill. This is just two strong ass niggas swinging at each other as hard as they can. One blast from Dragon or one sword swing from Arthur is enough to split the whole skies on some One Piece shit. Y'all know I can't go one video without mentioning One Piece. I'm sorry. And I love how as the fight goes on, Dragon appears less and less human. He gets this pure black form that looks like armor and makes him look more dragon-esque. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of reminds me of Femto. It's kind of weird. But this fight plays into something I love about Fire Force, which is the use of imagination in the way that you fight. We've already seen this used through Arthur believing himself to be the Night King and shit, but it's used in an even more direct way in the latter half of this fight. Because halfway through the fight, Dragon flies him and Arthur into space and they start fighting on the moon. But both these niggas are too dumb to understand humans can't breathe on the moon, which isn't a problem for Dragon because he's barely human, but Arthur literally suffocates and passes out because of this. But that's exactly how the whole imagination motif reaches its peak, because as Arthur passes out, text appears in the sky saying Arthur equipped the star ring, like a Nintendo RPG. And this is the moment where Arthur really became him, nigga, because not only does the ring give him the ability to breathe in space, it gives Arthur the ability to turn the thoughts of humanity into power. This nigga literally got the team on his back. He gets this cool ass star form and it makes him feel like he's part of the cosmos almost. Like it's not even Arthur fighting him, it's like the will of the universe. And this is the part I really want to see animated. They're zipping through space, clashing with each other on some Dragon Ball Z shit. I can just imagine this shit in the anime. Eventually, both fighters are worn down and it comes down to one final strike. And this is one of the most insane finishes to a fight ever. I had tears in my eyes at the end of this shit. As Arthur comes in for his final sword swing, Dragon blasts him, blowing his body in half. He only has the upper half of his body now. The lower half is completely gone, blown away. But Arthur's so determined that he still follows through on his swing and lets off an attack that cuts the earth in half. One of the most satisfying endings to a fight ever, but this shit had me damn near ready to cry. I thought we lost my dog for real. I love Arthur, one of my favorite characters ever, and this fight is just a prime example of everything that I love about him. He's the king, he's the GOAT. The next fight I want to talk about is Kyora versus Chihiro. Is it a bit early to be talking about this? Yes. Do I just want an excuse to talk about Kagurabachi? Also, yes.
What? If you're gonna talk about Kagurabachi fights, why aren't you talking about Sojo?
Boy, shut up talking to me. But seriously, narratively and visually, Kyora versus Chihiro just had some things that I found way more interesting than the Sojo fight. First of all, since their entire goal is to infiltrate the Sazanami storehouse and get back the enchanted blades, the whole dynamic around the fight is way different from anything we've seen in the story so far. Just putting yourself in an arena where your opponent has complete control, he's damn near in a domain expansion. But first off, the way Chihiro pulls up to this fight is crazy as f. He pulled up handling niggas with a broken blade, and not only was it broken, that bitch didn't have no power left.
So how did he use it? How did he use it if it didn't have any power left?
He told that bitch lock in, and it did. He said, Cloud Gouger, I know you don't have any power left, but lock the fuck in, bitch. That's real aura, nigga. That's real aura. I'm telling you. And the art style of Kagurabachi is just so good. Probably my favorite art style that's come out of any manga in the past 5 years. It makes the fights so much fun. Especially any shot where Chihiro's in motion. It has so much energy. You can almost see the movement taking place. And I feel like that's just so hard to capture in a still image. And Kyora's abilities and the fact that Hakuri has the same abilities gives this fight an extra layer of strategy that the rest of the fights in the series haven't had. Not to say that the fights haven't had any strategy, but not to this level. Like the way that Chihiro and Hakuri have to figure out that if they imbue items with Chihiro's spirit energy, he can sense it and use that spirit energy to move those things out of the storehouse. But that's the only way they can do it, because Kyora still has primary control over the storehouse, and the way that Kyora and his son's abilities bounce off of each other is not only good for the fight itself, but also good for the self-contained story between these two characters. And Kyora is able to do insane shit within this domain. He turns the floor into spikes and sends them flying at Chihiro, but then grenades come out of the spikes, and we're like, oh shit, Chihiro is whole. But no, he cuts the grenades, imbuing them with his spirit energy, and then Hakuri is able to teleport the blades outside of the storehouse and ends up blowing up a bunch of niggas in the crowd. That's kind of fucked up, but these niggas were all mob bosses and shit anyway, so who cares? And Hakuri got this raw ass picture out of it. That nigga know he in the edit. But to me, Kyora is by far the most interesting villain in the story so far. His desperation to continue the auction and the way that he makes it his life's purpose, and not only his life purpose, but his kids' life purpose as well. He's willing to throw away any life to keep the auction going, whether it's his son's, random innocent bystanders. The nigga don't care. And it's not like he doesn't love his kids, but it's more like he loves them as fellow members of his clan as opposed to loving them as a parent. And this dynamic that Kyora has with his kids creates the main internal conflict for Chihiro throughout the entirety of this arc. Because in order to fight off Chihiro, Kyora gives them the spirit energy equivalent of basically a suicide bomb. and one of the kids uses it and dies right in front of Chihiro. And this entire situation hits so close to home for Chihiro because of his relationship with his own dad and him also living to achieve his father's dreams, and him relating to Kyora's kids and how badly they want to honor their father and live up to his ideals and stuff. And I think it starts to raise the question in Chihiro's mind of like, how far will I go to fulfill my father's wishes? Look at this nigga's face when he sees that nigga blow himself up. It's a face of pure disgust. And I'm not gonna lie, there are quite a few horror elements to this fight that I'm gonna talk about later. But in general, I think this all serves the purpose of getting Chihiro to come to his own conclusions separate from his father. And he's probably gonna have a different idea of what to do with the enchanted blades than what his father wanted to do with them. And I'm interested in seeing how Chihiro's worldview develops from here, especially as he comes across more people who had a personal relationship with his dad. And I think this gets hammered home even more when we see Kyora pull out the Shinichi. This is by far the coolest enchanted blade we've seen in the story so far. Maybe aside from Chihiro's blade, but it's close. But this is the first time I'm looking at it and I see, oh shit, I kind of see why Chihiro's dad wanted all these blades locked up. This one genuinely made it feel like a weapon of mass destruction. It's to the point where I don't even fully understand the attacks. They feel almost impossible to track. It's just random black structures appear and damn near crush you to death, or it sends out some shockwave and sends you flying. Like, how do you even fight against that? And like I talked about earlier, it introduces this horror element to the manga that we haven't seen to this point, because the second Kyora gets a hold of the Shinichi, he has no control over that bitch. It's like the original bearer of the sword is just possessing him, and the more desperate Kyora becomes to protect the auction, the more insane and destructive the attacks become, to the point where random bystanders start to be affected by it. And this imagery right here is exactly why I want to see it animated, because with the Shinichi comes like this body horror element, because this black ooze or blood, I can't really tell because it's black and white, starts coming from their eyes and their mouth and their ears. Plants and flowers start growing out of their bodies as they make these agonizing faces. This is the first moment in this manga that actually made me tense up and like almost cringe a little bit. I'm damn near with Chihiro's dad. These things don't need to exist. But eventually the power of the blade becomes too much for him and Kyora dies. And as he's dying, he basically accepts defeat to Chihiro, because the exact son that he discarded and his inability to love his sons outside of what they provide to the clan led to his downfall. His failure as a parent led to a failure of his dreams, which was basically what Chihiro had been trying to beat into him the entire time. Fatherhood is really important in Kagurabachi, and I like how it keeps getting reinforced. And that final panel with Kyora kneeled on the ground, all the flowers growing out of him, wow. I can just imagine in the anime, the soundtrack dies out and the silence just hits as we see him kneel down dead. Oh man. For our next and final fight, we have Gojo versus Sukuna. Not only one of the best fights I've ever seen in a manga, but also probably the most controversial. Some people might be mad I even put it in this video, but it's my video. Fuck you. But a lot of the things I like about this fight are very similar to the things I like about Chrollo versus Hisoka, and some might be able to argue that Gege just copied Togashi. It wouldn't be the first time somebody made an accusation like that. Starting with the prep before the fight. This fight, like a lot of the other fights I've talked about on this list, involved a copious amount of preparation before the fight starts. But I would say this fight out of any of them has the most intentional preparation before the fight, and it's done by both fighters. Gojo not only getting his cursed energy reinforced by Utahime, but also with him coming up with all these plan Bs with the students, and Sukuna with his whole ritual to bond with Megami's soul and being able to use Maharage and all that. But I think it's very telling and says a lot about their characters, the difference in the preparation that they did before the fight. The way that Gojo is collaborating with people to use their different skills and talents, as opposed to Sukuna, who is simply using people. He's using Megami. He uses Uraume. At the end of the day, for Sukuna, it's always all about him. And those are the differing mentalities they go into at the beginning of this fight. And something that I love about this fight, as opposed to other fights that have a slow, gradual build-up, Gojo versus Sukuna just starts out crazy off rip and it never dies down. At the beginning of the fight, we immediately get a feel for the immense scale of this battle, because Gojo walks out, no talking, nigga. He immediately shoots off a hollow purple that destroys this building, and for basically anybody else, that would have been it. That would have been the end of the fight. But Gojo happens to be fighting against the only nigga that could survive an attack like that. And this fight is full of moments like that where they remind you these are the only two niggas that could fight like this. It really gives you the feel that these are the two strongest people in the verse and nobody else even comes close. Even the way that they talk shit to each other just always has this air of superiority to it. Like when they first speak to each other, Gojo tells Sukuna he's the challenger. Like, I'm the defending champ and you're challenging me. I don't know how accurate earth that is, but okay. But Sukuna responds with, "You are but a fish atop my chopping board. A bit fresher than the others, but still just a nameless fish. Let's start by peeling off those scales." Sukuna is just him. But this is also one of the major differences between Sukuna and Gojo that I really enjoy. Gojo is just so casual and aloof, but Sukuna always has this poetic nature to him. And for both of them, in their own specific special way, it makes them feel larger than life. And I feel like they will both be annoying to hang around, but for kind of different reasons. But I think one of the most interesting things about this fight is how it bends the rules of the power system, which usually wouldn't work in a power system like JJK, but it works specifically because of who these two characters are and who they've been hyped up to be. Like, I usually hate when fights just cut to other characters just talking about the fight, but here it works to show just how abnormal these fighters are, even compared to other super strong sorcerers. One of my favorite examples is the way that their domains clash, because Sukuna has a barrierless domain, which is already insane in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, but almost equally insane is the way that Gojo counters it. Sukuna's barrierless domain is a problem for Gojo because it extends past the barrier of Gojo's domain. So when Sukuna's domain attacks Gojo's barrier from the outside, it breaks it easily. And at that point, it's like, oh, Gojo's there's nothing he can do. He just can't use his domain. But no, Gojo flips his domain inside out so that the strong part is on the outside. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because the other sorcerers are looking around like, is that even possible? And there are a shit ton of moments like that. Even the way that they spam domains breaks the logic of the series so far, because domains use a lot of cursed energy. So usually you can only use 1 or 2 domain expansions per day, and once you've used your domain expansions, your cursed energy is burned out and you can't use your technique at all. So Sukuna and Gojo learn to do something that would usually be impossible. They're using reverse curse technique to restore their original curse technique. I know it's complicated, but stay with me. This is definitely not safe though, because the only way that they can make it happen is by basically hemorrhaging their brain. So even if you could do this, you probably wouldn't unless you're out of your fucking mind. But the way that they have to bend the power system just to contest each other gives the fight this constant feeling of being on the verge of ending. It feels like at any point one of them could land a crucial blow and the fight will be over. They both have to be perfect or they just get one shot. Like when Sukuna uses his domain expansion 0.01 seconds too late and he gets frozen up by Infinite Void and almost gets killed, and he would have got killed if he didn't get saved by his daddy Mahoraga, but that's none of my business. But that's how close the margin of error is for this fight, and it's like that throughout the entirety of it. But I think that makes the banter in this fight even better. The way that sometimes they aren't even fighting. They're just walking to the next area casually and talking about their techniques and shit. It's kind of startling because they're fighting to the death, so you would assume that there would be some kind of grudge between them, but not really. To me, it seems like in a different circumstance, Gojo and Sukuna could be good ass friends, because only those two understand the burden of being the strongest and how hard being the strongest makes it to relate to other people. And this highlights very important differences and similarities in what Gojo is fighting for and what Sukuna is fighting for, because in the end of this fight, in their greatest battle, they both have the opportunity to find the cure for their loneliness, which is something that Gojo accepts in his death and something that Sukuna abjectly rejects. But back to the choreography, there is a surprising amount of hand-to-hand combat in this fight, especially considering how many powers they both have, but that makes it even cooler the way that they mix those abilities in with the hand-to-hand combat. It's accentuated by these insane splash pages that I love when Jujutsu Kaisen does, because it just conveys impact so well. Like, I'm reading this shit, I damn near feel like I'm getting hit, almost like they're punching each other off the page. The choreography gets even cooler when Sukuna starts pulling out his Shikigami. He got Agito on one side and Mahoraga on the other side. The way that Gojo has to weave between Agito and Mahoraga, especially with Mahoraga knowing how to get through infinity, it adds a level of danger to the fight that we've never seen when it comes to Gojo, which makes it even rawer when Gojo turns around, looks at Agito and says, "You know what? I don't really think you belong here." Boom! One shot his ass. I don't give a fuck what nobody says. Even though Gojo got cut up like some sushi, that nigga still got aura, bro. You can't take that away from him. I love Gojo's power so much, bro. They just have such a larger than life feel to him. They call this nigga the honored one, and I can see why. It feels like his powers have been bestowed upon him by some higher power or something. I get a similar feeling with Sukuna's barrierless domain, and when he eventually gets the world slash technique, and the way other people describe his barrierless domain as painting on thin air without a canvas. It gives both their powers like this divine feeling. We are watching two fighters on the border of godliness, or devilliness in Sukuna's case. But it's two fighters who usually win effortlessly. Now, for the first time ever for Gojo, and probably for the first time in hundreds of years for Sukuna, they have to get creative in the way that they fight. Like Gojo firing off red first and then firing a blue after it so he can do a remote purple, or Sukuna using Megumi Soul for the Mahoraga adaptation so that he doesn't have to take the brunt of that damage. It all just goes to show how deeply Gege thinks about his power system and just how expansive this power system can be when pushed to its limit. And to me, this has one of the best endings to a fight ever, even though Gojo fans might disagree. But just imagine this shit in the anime. We just went through this sequence where Gojo did everything perfectly to beat Sukuna. He just hit Sukuna directly with his most powerful attack. We got all this fanfare going, everybody's celebrating. They probably got the hype music playing just for it to cut to Gojo in the afterlife. I know some people hated this reveal and the way that it was done, but I loved it. Slowly over the course of 236, reading it and realizing, oh, this nigga's in the afterlife. He's dead. It's rare that I experience that level of dread reading a manga, and it's just amplified by the fact that this is Gojo, the nigga that's supposed to be unbeatable. And then that shot of Gojo cut in half with the top half of his body laying on the ground. Man, definitely the most impactful moment in JJK to me, and probably one of the most impactful moments in all of Shonen. But yeah, man, that's all I got for y'all boys today. Let me know what is your favorite fight in manga in the comments below, and comment Night King down below if you got all the way to the end. Just confuse all the niggas that didn't make it here. Like the video if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel, join the members only for One Piece chapter reviews, and yeah, man, I'm gone.